Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 6th installment of Seattle Pride's Pride Speaks event. We're so glad that you're with us tonight. My name is Crystal Marks. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the Executive Director of Seattle Pride, a bisexual woman and wife to an Army combat veteran. So tonight's topic is really close to my heart. We're so excited that you're here with us. I'm going to share with you a little bit about what tonight looks like, and then a little bit about Seattle Pride, and then I'll introduce our fantastic MC moderator for the evening, Melissa Margain. But first, let's talk about tonight. You are here to hear about serving with pride, about veterans of the United States Armed Forces who are members of the LGBTQIA plus community or advocates, and what it was like to serve and what is missing. We're so excited that you're here. We have this as a free event, which hopefully you know because you're here. But donations are very, very welcome and accepted. And we'll pop a link to our donations in the chat in a little bit as well if you want to make something to keep this free for everyone else. Seattle Pride is a year-round organization. We're not just the parade people, although we do put on a very nice parade. Thank you very much in non-COVID times. We also put on events like this. Every month we have a Pride Speaks event, a speaker series, a panel discussion, so that you can learn about a topic that often gets overlooked in our community. We've talked about demystifying gender, parenting LGBTQIA plus kiddos, what it's like to be in our community and to try to start up a business, and so much more. And we're excited to move forward into this new year that's coming soon with health and new topics. And we can't wait to share that with you as well. We also have a quarterly magazine. Right now, our summer magazine is out and it has the one and only Big Frida on the cover. Our fall magazine is going to launch here in the next few days. We're really excited about that. That's free as well. It's going to be at nearly 900 locations throughout King County, South Snohomish, and North Pierce counties as well in Washington State. And we truly hope that you will pick one up if you see it. And as you may have just heard, the key word is free. We're trying to make sure that everyone in our LGBTQIA plus community and our straight allies have access to information and resources without the additional barriers. So this magazine is also available online for free on our website, seattlepride.org. And I hope that you'll check that out as well. And again, Seattle Pride is year-round, so we've got an event coming up in October, on October 9th, that we can't wait to tell you more about. It's on our website as well, but you'll have to go there to check it out. And without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our moderator. Melissa Margain, she, her pronouns, is a United States Army veteran who served during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era, as well as when the decision was repealed. Melissa is also the Seattle Program Director of Minority Veterans of America, and considers herself a part of the LGBTQIA plus community and an advocate for underserved and underrepresented populations. She is a passionate person who is inclusive of all groups of individuals and intersections, as well as a powerful public speaker, which you'll see tonight, a change agent, and really just an all-around badass. Everyone, welcome Melissa to the stage.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the warm introduction.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. So again, like Crystal said, in tonight's community discussion, Pride Speaks, Served with Pride, we will explore the experiences of LGBTQIA plus veterans and their experiences with stigma, resources, and community during their military service, as well as veterans. And so I'd like to start by introducing my panelists this evening. Monique Brown, pronouns she, her, is a veteran advocate and executive director of FOB Hope. Welcome, Monique. Crystal Ellington, pronouns she, her, is a communications director for Minority Veterans of America. And Skye Locke, she, her pronouns, secretary, the Diversity Alliance of the Puget Sound. So welcome, panelists.
Thank you. I was trying to say hi and I was muted still.
No worries. How's everybody doing this evening?
Good.
Good. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for joining this discussion this evening. Again, we are going to be talking about your lived experiences while serving, as well as, what has changed or what you have found to be helpful during your transition into veteran status, if you will. So let's go ahead and jump right into the discussion. My first question is going to be for all three panelists, and we will start with Skye. Skye, my question to you is, as an LGBTQIA plus veteran, what does military service mean to you? And why did you decide to join the military?
Thank you so much. I'd bet that we're going to hear this a lot today. Any veteran or service member is probably going to tell you a similar story, like it's about service, it's about duty, it's about like maybe signing up to pay that sacrifice that unfortunately people have paid before us, so that we can possibly leave a better world for those that come after us. You could lose a few years of your life that you could have spent in the civilian world at best, or you could lose everything in your world at worst. I was actually medically separated at 17 months in service, so I didn't actually see any combat. But since I left back during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era, I never stopped actually trying to serve my community, and now I'm getting a chance to do that with nonprofit works, and I'm stoked. I'm thrilled.
Thank you for that. Crystal, same question.
First, Melissa, thank you so much for hosting this evening. It's great to see your face once again. So me personally, I joined as someone that was familiar through the military, through my family legacy. So my grandfather, my uncle, and my aunt all served prior. And in addition to that very strong family tie, as Skye was mentioning, I had a strong desire to commit to service and to commit to something larger than myself while pursuing my passion, which is aviation and aviation support. So when I joined, I remember the conversations that I would have with my family members about their experiences in the Army, and it not mattering what gender you were or what your background was, but once you put that uniform on, you were part of a family and part of a community.
Thank you so much. And Monique, what does military service mean to you, and why did you join?
Well, I wish that I had that story, that I wanted to serve and, be patriotic and all that stuff, but that was not my story. I had been going to junior college for 3 years, and I was about to go for my 4th year, and I was like, oh, absolutely not. And a recruiter called, and so I was like, I'm going there. So my father had been in and my grandfather had been in, so it was, part of the family, but I really went because I didn't want to go to junior college for another year. Now, when I came back to active duty some years later, because I did 3 years active, 5 years guard and reserve, and 5 years reserve, 10 years guard, and then I went back to active duty, that's when I really felt like I wanted to be of service and wear that uniform again. I took pride in that uniform. Joining the military, I didn't, have any real reason, patriotic reason, but my service means the world to me. I did go to combat twice. And so I really felt like I did my job to serve my country. And so I'm very proud. Like a lot of women veterans don't say that they're a veteran, but I am very proud of my service, and I'm always talking about my service.
Wonderful. And you made a really valid point, Monique, about the fact that most women veterans either don't identify or have a harder time identifying because of, just their service comparison. And, and if I didn't deploy, do I really consider myself a veteran? And, and I think that's a discussion to really, have and let people know that this is a safe space. And regardless of, how long you served or what your MOS was, you raised your right hand, your service to this country, is just as valid. So thank you for mentioning that. I do have a follow-up question for you, Monique, if that's okay.
Sure.
With serving in different component statuses, did you notice a difference? Did you feel like one suited you better? Was there more support? Talk a little bit about that if you can.
I mean, being a lesbian in the military is difficult anyway. And back, I started in 1987. So you had to lie, that question on there was like, have you ever been involved in homosexual activity? And you're like, oh, no, not me. And so you had to lie anyway. But the only difference I found was that, I got to go home at the end of the day, the weekend drill. So I might have had to deal with some stuff for the weekend, but then I could go home. In active duty, you're just always there. So you're dealing with the harassment and the jokes and the, everything all the time.
Okay, well, thank you for that. My next question, I'd love to start with Monique. again, what do you believe are the greatest barriers to LGBTQIA plus folks serving in the military?
So I will not act as if I'm an expert. I got out in 2013, but I do know that there's still some lingering harassment and discrimination that goes on with LGBTQ veterans, and whether that be from commanders and first sergeants, and the different kind of punishment that someone could receive as opposed to one of their straight counterparts. I know that still exists. I know sexual harassment and just assaults still happen in the military, and some of that is based on sexuality and sexual preference, and some is not. But I would say the discrimination is probably the biggest barrier. I know for me, one of the barriers could have been that I would not, once I got out, I would not be able to have my wife on my benefits. But because we live in a state that accepts gay marriage, then she's on my benefits. But I think that might be a barrier for some. I don't know anymore whether you just have to be in a state that recognizes gay marriage, but that could be a barrier for some as well.
Thank you. I do want to hear kind of thoughts from each of you. I want to jump over to Crystal really quick about this question, because I know she has most recently separated from service. And so I'm curious to see how things have, evolved, or, where there's still work needed to be done. So talk a little bit about that, Crystal. What do you believe are the greatest barriers to LGBTQIA folks serving?
Well, I can only speak from personal experience. I served in a special operations unit, so it was very cisgendered, very heterosexual environment. So I think the general paradigm surrounding what it means to serve as an LGBTQIA person, and to be treated as such, as an equal, as someone that went through the same training as their straight counterparts. And I totally agree with Monique. Discrimination is still very much an issue. And I think that it's just going to have to change moving forward. And we're going to have to be the voice of that change and speak up for those that can't speak for themselves.
Thank you for that. And Skye, your thoughts?
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I was separated in 2005, and truth be told, I wasn't out to myself yet. So even I didn't know what kind of discrimination that I was missing out on, if that's such a thing as you can have, is to miss out on discrimination. But as for barriers to service, one of those things can sometimes be the actual policy. I remember the outrage in 2017 when trans people were banned from the military with a tweet. Other times it's, the internal culture of the organizations or the different branches. Some are regarded differently than others, or at least the perception of it. Sometimes the same thing that leads people to serve can attract a certain kind of people that propagate an image that's, there is a strong bond of kinship, and that can also alienate others that are deemed too other, and sometimes that can be detrimental. Thanks to efforts of great people, a lot of that has changed, at least according to the people that I've spoken to and I work with. I remember talking to a friend of mine not long after I got out, because he was still in after I came out to myself. And he didn't think at the time that we should repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because he didn't believe in the ability of the people who propagate that culture to change. And it would be hubris, right, to expect it to change overnight, with the stroke of a pen or whatever. But it's true that those stigmata, they still exist. It's still there, and even if people don't readily admit to it, it's still there. So basically, it's the internal culture, or at least the perception of it, that can lead those of us inside the LGBTQIA plus communities feeling put off and just I'd rather not.
Right. Absolutely. So let me ask, with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, do you think that the barriers that LGBTQIA vets and service members face currently have kind of lessened? Do you feel like they are still experiencing the same degree of barriers? Talk a little bit about maybe what, some veterans have told you in the process of transitioning, or maybe what you guys have experienced. And let's start with Crystal.
I think that, as Skye was saying, to expect things to change with just the stroke of a pen is unrealistic. And I think that the challenges have only gotten different. I don't think they've lessened at a degree. But I mean, I think it's personally, as someone that identifies with the community, one of my biggest challenges has been like family planning. So something like just the ability to have a child with my partner is, the challenges that we look at now that we might not have recognized before the repeal. So I just think that things have just changed. I don't think that the barriers have lessened at all.
Okay. Did any other panelists have any comments or thoughts about that? Sure. Monique.
Yeah, I have thoughts because I went in 1987 and got out in 2013, right? So when I first went in, I was stationed here at JBLM, and there was a club called 733 downtown Tacoma. And when you walked out the door at the end of the evening, somebody would yell out CID, and everyone would take off running. Like half the club took off running, so you knew it was gay military members, right? And so that's how it felt. We had to hide all the time. You could not say anything. You could not, you find yourself trying to walk a little differently and act a little differently because you didn't want people to know, because you could be kicked out. And so when I came back and Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, I felt this relief, like I could just be me and I didn't have to worry about being kicked out of the military. So even though there is still discrimination and stuff, just that change made you feel a little lighter because you knew you weren't going to get kicked out just because of who you love.
Thank you so much for that. Before I move on, I do want to let our viewers know that this is an interactive conversation. If you find yourself curious or want some follow-up questions asked to our panelists, please go ahead and type your questions in the chat. There will be a Q&A session later after the panel discussion, and we'd love to answer any questions that you may have about just the discussion we're having or things you might be curious about or needing support around. So please do that. Our next question, I'd like to start with Skye for this next question. What issues uniquely affect different groups of LGBTQIA service members? How do experiences differ for trans service members compared to service members who are gay and cisgender? And I know that was a wordy question, so please take your time. It's on the screen.
That's fine. I have a wordy answer. I actually wasn't, as I mentioned, privy to life in the service as a non-cis heteronormative presenting person. I came out to myself first in terms of attraction 5 years after I left service, and then in terms of gender, like another 10 years after that. So it took me a while. But in the retrospect and in working with people who are sometimes veterans, sometimes active duty, a lot of the times what we see is of course, the same culture and the same discrimination, the same, locker room talk comments that people hear. Sometimes it's so bad that if a service member were to start transitioning, they would have to change units, and they know that. And it makes me wonder sometimes how they know that. It's like, what are you already seeing that makes you know for sure that you will not be safe? You tell this, if you tell your chain of command, it's like, I'm a trans person. It's like, the worst that can happen in my mind is they expect me to show up the next day with the correct uniform. That would be the scary part for me, is where do I find all of these uniform pieces for tomorrow? That's not going to happen. but it's always just so mind-blowing. I guess I kind of answered the second part of the question first, which was like, for specifically trans members, there's also the issue of whether or not your chain of command is going to give you the go-ahead if you like secure the means to like have gender affirming surgeries to actually get off for the time it would take to have the surgery and to recover. So like there's a lot of questions in the air as to like, will my chain of command allow me to like complete my surgical transition, or will I have to wait until I get out? I mean, we can still prescribe the HRT, like all of that stuff is fine. That's covered under TRICARE, like nobody's paying extra for that. But yeah, it's all very interesting. I don't know if those like policies have changed, but like what quote unquote elective procedures you decide to have are still very much at the whim of your chain of command. So I imagine that's still a very big problem.
Absolutely. I know there's, been discussions around, the logistics of transitioning and the fact that people have to come out to themselves. And so, Crystal, talk a little bit about that. What has been your experience with, service members who have maybe gone through that transition or have been looking for support as they begin that journey? Are there any common themes or types of resources that you see often those service members are in need of?
Certainly. So I was also stationed at JBLM, just like Monique. And there is a huge shortage of resources available to LGBTQIA community members. And it's actually, from my experience, it was very disheartening because it was hard finding that sense of community. Because I do think that once that uniform comes off, people fail to understand that outside of being a soldier, you're still a person and you still want to find your community and have that safe space. So, I mean, I think if there were those resources available more readily, it would encourage service members to engage with one another in those ways and just try to find those safe spaces and maybe not have the negative interactions they have with their chain of command, or at least they'd have somewhere to go to talk about it.
Absolutely. And so my next follow-up question is really for any of the panelists. So feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts about it. What have you seen the VA? How have you seen the VA evolve, around resources and support for LGBTQIA plus veterans? Skye, sure.
One of the biggest changes I saw was as a veteran starting her transition, I learned, first of all, that the VA does cover HRT. I didn't know that before. I actually got started through Planned Parenthood. So as a veteran, the information was very like not available to me. And like secondly, like there are some surgical procedures that they do cover, but the rest they still don't, even though there have been like some moves to cover them, but I don't really know what the timeline is going to be like, or like how, when, where, who. Like we don't have any of that information. So I was trying to figure out how like that was going to happen for me, because it was like a question that you have when you're early in transition is like, how do I do the later parts of transition? Like what's going on? How do I do this? And I was asking people at the VA for like resources or links or like grants or like other funding sources that might be helpful, or like, because it's like you have access to the VA healthcare system, you probably don't have much of anything else. So I was like, how then are trans veterans who don't have any other kind of care getting their surgeries? Which was like a big deal to me, because that says it's like we're in a state where you literally get surgeries on Medicaid. However, our veterans can't get surgeries at the VA, or through the VA, I should say. So I'm like, this is like a big invisible group of people Like there are thousands of veterans who are just like kind of in the middle. It's like, we don't have resources, we don't have information, we don't have knowledge, we don't have like any way to like collect that sort of information. Like there was no route for any of that stuff from inside the VA. I had to go outside to figure out how that's going to happen. So what I saw when I started asking those questions was people started coming to me with things that they had searched for and found, or things that other people had experienced in like their transition, that like they hit a road bump or they hit like a snag or something and needed some sort of like outside assistance. So all of a sudden, like the gears are clicking. It's like, oh, I'm this person for all of these LGBTQIA plus community members who are also veterans. It's probably a good idea to have like some information on hand for like the services we don't cover, like resources we don't provide. So in a weird way, I contributed to a flow of information that didn't exist, just because it's like, that's an interesting question. How do trans veterans who don't have access to other kinds of care get their surgeries covered? Like, I don't know. Like, what's going on? Like, I could literally go work at Starbucks for 6 months and get my surgeries covered. But I'm like, can you see me as a barista? There's no way.
I'm sure you make a mean latte. And so if you ever decide to follow through on that venture, let me know. I'll be first in line. Crystal.
Yes, so I wanted to speak to the changes that I've been seeing in the VA. This is going to be a shameless plug. I'm going to warn you now. So working with Minority Veterans of America, we get to see policy change happen firsthand and happen very quickly. And a lot of the times it is through efforts that our amazing policy team has put forth. So I did see that the VA recently implemented a LGBTQIA subcommittee that will speak specifically to the experiences and the needs and the desires of our community. And going back to your question, Melissa, the greatest barriers to the LGBTQ community serving in the military, I think that there aren't enough people that are representative and truly representative of our community to speak to what our concerns are. So I think with this new subcommittee, I am, betting and hoping that the VA will truly understand what the needs are and how to have those needs satisfied moving forward.
It's such a perfect segue into my next question, which stays along the same lines, Monique, so don't worry, we'll hear from you. So my next question to the panel is, aside from the VA, right, what other military systems and policies should change to be more inclusive of LGBTQIA plus service members? And I know we talked about it a little bit in this previous discussion, but let's explore that. I definitely want to hear Monique's thoughts. And then again, if Skye and Crystal have anything to add to it, what policy change would be helpful? Monique.
Well, that's not what I was prepared to answer, but I'll try.
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts from the previous question.
From the previous question, I was going to say that, obviously the marketing for the VA has changed. And so it makes you feel a little more comfortable when you see our flag everywhere. And then also each of the hospitals is getting the LGBTQ office, and the state VA offices are now adding LGBTQ offices. And I think that should be the change in active duty. There should be an office for LGBTQ veterans to go and get some questions answered, have some support, things like that.
Okay. Any comments on our new question that again stays along the same lines, but additional policies, like Chris. Okay, we'll go with Crystal. She's itching to answer. So,
well, first, I completely agree with all of that you just said. That is spot on. I think having those LGBTQ offices in active duty is going to be essential to helping those service members that are still serving. But to answer the question, I think programs that are centered around like sexual harassment, like SHARP, they need to include marketing and communications without gender-specific language and dramatizations to include the non-binary and trans folks, and everyone so that they feel included. Because I know a lot of the communications and marketing is very cisgendered and still very heterosexual. So I think that taking those aspects out, or even just including more groups, would be helpful, because that visibility is the key to the changing of the narrative. So.
Such a thoughtful response. Thank you so much for that. I agree. I believe that, I would love to see an active duty base have a resource center for LGBTQIA plus service members to come, to be themselves, to feel supported, to be able to navigate their feelings, their challenges, their transitions. And it took me back to a place, and I don't want to spend too much time on me, but it took me back to a place where I remember when Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed. And I was sitting in the dental clinic at Tripler in Hawaii. And I remember the room was split. There were veterans who you could tell had been waiting for that and just were so excited that they just kind of responded to the news. And then on the flip side of that, it was one of those moments where they were like, I think I've outed myself. And they weren't really sure what to do soon after that. Yes, it came across the news. There was this huge discussion, but there also wasn't a lot of talk around how we move forward, right? Like what support is going to be enforced, what's in place for those that, decide to now openly serve. And so I think it would have warmed my heart, especially being a veteran that identifies in the community, where I could have gone, right, and felt like myself, and just that just would have been such a warm feeling. So thank you for that thought. I hope someone here is listening that can help push that idea forward, so that our veterans and our service members can feel like, their service matters, that they can show up and be their whole selves, and feel like their service is just as valid as their counterparts. So let's move right along. My next question to the panel is, what LGBTQIA inclusive social networks did you engage in, with, or know of while serving and as veterans? Any social media platforms, any way to kind of connect to folks that you felt comfortable and safe with? We'll go with Monique, and then we'll jump over to Skye.
I had only my network, right? My small little circle. I didn't know of any when I was serving. And still, you can find a lot of stuff on Facebook now, but definitely while I was serving, there was, you just had your little group that kind of hit together and did things together.
Okay, Skye?
Possibly shameless plug. I was eager early in my transition for any kind of community or like a social network of some kind, and that's how I found the Diversity Alliance of the Puget Sound. I was a member for 2 days before I joined the board. So it was just like, I'd been attending for a long time, but like memberships came along at a later date. So it's not like I was just like there for 2 days and now I'm on the board running this thing. Absolutely not. But it was a wonderful, lovely group of people. And I was just like, we should be in every major city, because it's all just like peer led, and it's like we've expanded our program offerings and everything. And it's just like, we're starting in person next month, which is super scary, at the Rainbow Center in Tacoma. But I'm just like, how did I get here at this point in my life, where it's like I'm trans for like 5 minutes and I'm on the board of a 501c3? Like, what is my life? But I also found a lot of great resources in like some of the Facebook groups. That's actually how I found the Diversity Alliance, is through one of those Facebook groups. One of the other people on the board is also an admin of the group, so it's just like an easy transition to bring people over. So it's like, I met a lot of like really great people inside my community. And this is after I've already been in the queer community for like 10 years, because it's like, oh wait, I also like guys. That's fine. So it was a very interesting and fun kind of transition for me, if you will, to go from, somebody who needed support to somebody who provided support, which was also very uplifting for me. So I found a lot of what I need just in my own circle again. So to repeat what Monique said earlier.
How do you believe your service would have been different had you had resources in place to support you during your service as an LGBTQIA service member? And so that question is for any of the panel. Do you believe your service would have been different had you had more support in place?
I for sure know mine would have been different at the beginning because, you know, we had to hide and everybody was afraid. And so if we weren't afraid of losing our job and getting kicked out of the military, who knows what we could have done, you know, because we would have been confident to do our work more efficiently. But we just, you know, held back so much of ourselves because of having to hide. So I think support, you know, even as you're transitioning out and you're trying to find out all the benefits that you earned and that you could give to your family, it would have been helpful for somebody to be able to prep me for what I could do with my wife and children at that time in order to, you know, get benefits for all of us.
Skye, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was also going to say something similar. I mean, it would be hazarding a guess, but to feel supported and not just what I'm doing, but who I am, which, I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't be. We were whole ass soldiers when we were there. I don't know why that would be any different if we were like, you know, like lesbian or gay or intersex or trans or agender or asexual or, you know, questioning or just like queer. So it's like I don't see how that makes any of that difference. Like they have programs for single soldiers, better opportunities for single soldiers. I was also at JBLM before it was JBLM. So I remember all of those fun things, going to Mount Rainier on a day trip because why not? So it's like they have better opportunities for some soldiers, but in like embracing the whole person that we are, you know, both before and after we come out to ourselves and just like start embracing our transition into becoming who we are. I can't imagine having to make that choice at any point in my life to go, oh my God, I'm trans and still be in the military. Like I have no idea how terrified I would be, but I have a suspicion that it might be pretty awful. So like I'm thinking it's like sometimes it would just be better to out myself and get kicked out. But then again, we're talking about, am I going to lose those benefits? Like what's the nature of my discharge going to be? Like what's my status? So it's like, what are my choices? What are my options? Do I just stay here and tough it out until I finish my enlistment and bounce? Or like, is this something different? It's like, you know, when you're still when you still haven't got your discharge, it's like you're protective of it. It's like it's your baby. It's like this is my retirement right here. Like this is going to protect me if you know, if I leave military service someday, or when I leave military service someday. It's going to make sure that, you know, when I'm get like later on, it's like it's going to make sure I have access to my GI Bill benefits. It's going to make sure I have access to Chapter 31 if that's like available to me, if my leaving the service was you know, due to an injury, or if, you know, my disabilities are service connected. So you asked all of those questions, and I imagine that if that wasn't an issue, I wouldn't have to worry about that. That would be one less source of stress for a job that's already extremely stressful. So I can't imagine that it would be a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Monique.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention, because Skye touched on it a little bit, you know, there are still veterans who are trying to get their discharge status changed, upgraded, because they were kicked out for homosexual activity. And so they're still trying to get that changed so that they can access those benefits that they earned while serving. So
That's such a good point. I know with a lot of the work that Minority Veterans of America does, my question is posed toward you, Crystal. Have you seen, an influx of veterans who are still working to get that done? Are there veterans who have given up on that process? There's a lot of mistrust when it comes to the VA and government systems and making sure that we have everything we need, especially once we transition and become veterans. So how has Minority Veterans been working in that space to help support veterans who are looking for that type of support?
Thank you so much for asking that question, Melissa. So Minority Vets is currently working with our policy team to work on upgrading and getting automatic upgrades for those veterans that have been discharged due to, their status and have been only discharged solely because they identified as gay. And in working with the policy team and seeing the amazing work that they're doing and hearing the stories of these veterans who have given so much for their country, who have done several tours, who are officers, who live and breathe the military, and hearing their stories simply because they couldn't be with someone because of who they love or couldn't serve because of who they loved. I think it is one of the largest mishaps and oversights that the military could have done for several service members.
So what do you say to a veteran or even a viewer that's joining us right now who may still be dealing with, isolation and feelings around not having that type of support? How do you encourage them to keep moving forward, to continue to fight for everything that they are deserving of? What do you say to them?
I would certainly say to keep fighting, and also that you definitely have community. You have community with, I'm sorry, Skye, your organization, Diversity Association of Puget Sound. I might have messed that up.
Diversity Alliance.
Alliance, I was close. You have it with Minority Vets. There are so many veteran service organizations that are at your service that are willing to speak for you and to make sure that you have a voice. And don't, we urge you to not go through this alone, that you do have community all around you, even though you may feel isolated, and we are here for you.
Thank you so much for that. Monique.
Well, that's basically what I was going to say. I was going to say there are a lot of organizations out there supporting, like Minority Veterans of America and many others. So, it's different from before where you had nobody to turn to. And now there's a lot of organizations that you can turn to. So just keep pushing forward and find that organization to help you. And if they don't help you enough, then look for the next one, because there are plenty of out here now.
And Skye, please, an opportunity to respond to that question as well.
I would also pretty much say the same thing. It's just never stop fighting for who you are. It's like at one point in my life, I was always fighting to get something earned. It was not related to like military service, but I was waiting to get my degree. And for like a paperwork mix up, I had to wait like an extra 6 months to get my degree. And I just like never stopped fighting until I got it. It's like, that is yours. You did that. Like you've painted the painting, and all you have to do is sign your name on the bottom right hand corner or wherever you're going to put it. And it's like, it's yours. That's your painting. That's your baby. You made that. You earned it. So it's yours. Go and get it. There might be some obstacles in your way, which is unfortunate. I shouldn't have to work for it twice, but sometimes you just got to do what you have to do. It's just like, never stop. Be belligerent. That's why you signed up in the first place. So it's just like, I won't ever stop. That's why I'm here. It's like, I just have that audacity. It's like, we do what we do and then we go home. So it's just like, do what you do, but you do it for you this time. And that's fine. That's valid. You earned it.
Nice. Absolutely. All really, really good points. I hope that this has helped a viewer out there who may be still struggling or fighting that battle. Again, to whether it's upgrade your discharge status, to just feel like your service mattered and was just as important. I want to jump back to something Crystal mentioned earlier with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? We know that the policy itself changed doesn't necessarily mean that the climate changed. Or that the support around that has changed. Oftentimes, there's this idea that you have to show up to work with one face, right? And then you are, a completely different person outside of that. It can also be correlated to service members who have deployed, where, at least for me, I found that I know and I remember who I was before I joined the service, right? Like I remember a young, almost naive Melissa, who was just ready to go and kind of super patriotic and like, I'm going to knock this out. And then I remember who I had to become after my service, right? I knew that I had to, put on like this face and smile and be ready to go and have like all the answers and, just this brave face, but I don't always know who I am. Does that make sense? Like, I know who I was, I know who I've had to become, but like, who am I like every day, my authentic self, right? Who am I outside of my traumas, right? Who am I outside of like all of these different intersections, these different identities, and who's going to be the most accepted? You know what I mean? And so have any of you guys experienced that? Are you still experiencing that? Like, let's have a quick conversation about how you show up in the world, if you're comfortable. Monique, let's start with you.
I'm very comfortable, and I haven't always been. I used to show up half of me, right? Hiding who I was sexuality wise and being a masculine female, sometimes you have to soften that up a bit when you're in the military. And so I didn't really know who I was then. I was just trying to, fit in and not be pointed out. And I did that still for many years. But when I got out, I really learned to come in the room, Monique Brown, and show up as me. And if people don't like it, then they just don't like it. But somebody in there is going to like it, right? And so I just show up as myself. Now, I'm older. I'm in my 50s now. So as you grow, you start to forget about what other people think about you and just worry about what you think. So it's a little easier as you're older. But now, I just come in my authentic self, because no matter what, there's somebody in the room that isn't going to like you. So you might as well be yourself anyway, right? And you're not there to please people. So, I just show up as my authentic self. I might curse you out 1 minute and then cry and hug you the next.
Yes, it's such a good point. I used to always hear this saying, like, be yourself. Everybody else is taken. So, yep, just show up. Crystal, Skye, any thoughts? Crystal.
Alyssa, I really don't appreciate you taking that quote right out of my mouth. I was really legit about to say that. That aside, I will say my experience has been a bit of the same, but also a little bit different from yours, Monique. As a feminine presenting woman that is queer, it has been difficult for me in a different way, because I would have, coworkers tell me all the time, "Oh, you don't look gay. You don't look like you like girls. You just haven't had the right experience yet." And I'm like, first of all, I'm 10 years older than all of y'all, so I'm pretty sure I know what I like. But even that, in the context of a work setting, I didn't realize that I was changing myself when I would hear microaggressions like that, and really having to understand what that meant and how I showed up coming to work and having to prove myself, and that, I don't let my queerness define me. It is my identity. It's who I am. It is a part of who I am. But I needed coworkers to understand that you don't get the right to define who I am. That's my job and my job only. So I think that leaving the military and, transitioning out so soon, just left in July, I think that that's been one of the hardest things that I've had to do, is really understand who I was out of the uniform.
Such a good point. Thank you. And Skye.
I was also gonna say, I had a really good shell when I first enlisted. I had an idea of, like it's been said before, who I was going to be. Maybe not exactly, but like I had an idea, like I had a trajectory. Didn't go the same direction. And my experience is actually quite the reverse in that my face, the face I had to put on, was supposed to be a very masculine face. I failed that one too, both in and out of the military, and now I guess I know why. But like the person that I had to be, like, you know, whether I had the uniform on or didn't, like had to fit a certain, you know, I had to fit a certain mold. Like it had to be like uniform while I was there, certainly, and there were certain expectations, you know, when the uniform came off as to like, you know, who I was. I had those same expectations for a while. It took a while before I caught on that it's like, oh, wait a second, I see what's going on. So it was a very different experience in that way for me, but also like the same in that like I had an idea of who I was trying to be and it was just wrong in so many ways. But then I'll also I think it was a good experience for me, just because it taught me a lot about myself. Like you learn about who you are as you know, going into the military, and then you transition out of the military, and then it's like you maybe take some time, figure out what you want to do with your life, and then like maybe you use that Chapter 31, maybe you use those GI Bill benefits, maybe you don't. You know, that's valid. That's up to you. But you know, there was a lot of introspection that needed to go on that I just didn't have time for when I was enlisted. So you know, who I was and who I became were two different people. But now I just have my head on a swivel for a completely different reason.
Thank you for that. So, in having this conversation about policy, about how, you know, certain regulations affect service members, I'm curious to know from each of you, how can allies and or civilians work to improve the experience of service members? And do you think it's on them to do so? So let's start with Crystal.
Sorry, I forgot to take myself off mute. So for starters, I really think it's super important, paramount even, that allies and civilians stop using equity and inclusion interchangeably. I think that is a great place to start because they are not the same thing. So essentially, equity is about making sure everyone is treated fairly, even though we know fairness is not accurate, with equal access to information resources, but the rampant systematic oppression of people of color and LGBTQIA community, and those even in the intersection in the military, just because a resource is available to you doesn't mean the people that need it the most actually get it. So I think in making sure that there is a definition of those two separately is a great place to start. And I also think that that's the only way that things are going to improve, is making sure that equity and inclusion are part of the conversation with civilians and allies.
Thank you for that. Monique.
Yeah, allies are great, but it's not on them. It's not on civilians and allies. It's on the military. And they need to start from the top, work their way down to support everyone within the ranks. There is a reason we have a military. We've got to protect this country. Nobody has time to be playing around with who loves who, right? We're on the mission. So they need to get everybody to stop worried about who's sleeping with who, who's loving who, and get out there and perform the mission, and stop making people feel uncomfortable when they're at work. I just think it's on the military to fix it.
Skye.
I'll agree. There's definitely a lot of policy change that's needed inside the military for sure. but I also think that there is a role for civilians and allies in that change. I mean, they have an awful lot to say about, our soldiers who are overseas protecting our freedoms when it's about one thing. But, when the situation changes, when it's about who's allowed to serve, or who's allowed to, openly serve, or who's allowed to, marry whoever they want to marry, or love whoever they want to love, or, express themselves according to their gender expression. Those are different things. We're very respectful of our service members one moment, and then the next it's just like we don't even exist, or like, it wasn't really that important in the first place. It was just like for you to make a point, or for you to shut me up about something. So it's more about, to me, taking that conversation and then just tweaking it or changing it a little bit. I think the best thing that we can offer both our both of our veterans and service members, and like even our allies and civilians, is education. It's like there's a lot that people think they know about, gender diversity or sexual orientation. But the fact is that they just straight up don't. And they go into like all of this expecting like people to be one way, and then they turn out to be another way. And it's like it's all completely valid. We're a very diverse species, humanity. But some of us don't exactly understand the expression of that diversity. So I think it's valid to say that, it should at least primarily be inside the military, because they can definitely use a lot of education about gender diversity and sexual orientation and gender expression and all of those sorts of things. But I also think that the people that were so pissed off in 2017 when we had trans people in the military could stand to know that the Lexapro that I was prescribed when I was in the military was way more expensive than the testosterone that the soldier next to me would have been taking, or the estradiol and the spironolactone that another soldier to my other side would be taking. So who's really getting the shaft on this? It's like, why are you so up in arms about the care that we do provide, and you're so pissed off about the surgeries that we don't provide? So it's like, what is your deal? It's like you think we're giving stuff that we're not, and then it's like the stuff that we do give, you build like completely skipped the cost analysis. So it's like, what is it going to take for you to even understand what the hell is going on? It's like, stop using me as like a political bargaining chip when the climate suits you, but when it comes to, I don't know, let's let trans veterans get affirming surgeries, the jury goes out into like cost analysis, and like, this is going to cost X amount. I'm just like, yeah, but they're veterans and they need medical care, and this is necessary medical care. So it's just like, do that. It shouldn't be a novel concept, is basically where I'm going with that.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the lived experiences of service members and our civilians, do you guys believe that there's a greater influence in change when that civilian or ally is prior service? Sure, Crystal. And let me know if I need to clarify my question, but we'll go ahead and start with you.
I think that when there is a tie to military service, I think that civilians and allies are a lot more willing to help and a lot more willing to get involved. Most of the kind of people that I've come in contact with are prior service, or they've had family or a spouse that has served, versus most of the people that are against against military service members serving overseas or getting deployed. Those are the folks that don't really have much of an interaction and have much experience with the military. That's, for me, my personal 2 cents.
So let me ask those of you who have deployed, do you feel like it was harder for you to serve in the capacity that you needed to while in a combat zone, while downrange, with the identity that you had? Was it something that, you know, your other service members, you know, were supporting you in during that time? How was deployment and that service? If anybody wants to talk about that, was there a difference in it? Did you feel like there was more support because you were in a different type of environment? Was there less support? Did it have any bearing on your deployments?
I deployed with 123 infantry. I supported an infantry unit, and I did not find anything different than how we were. Now you have to understand that I was very outspoken when I deployed. The first sergeant even asked, you know, Staff Sergeant Brown, why are these grown men afraid of you? So, you know, I am the aggressive A-type personality, so I had no issues when I deployed.
Same, Monique. Same.
You know, I felt like I deployed in 2009 with 1st Medical Brigade out of Fort Hood, which is a whole nother story in and of itself. I found that I was very open with my service. I was serving during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and also before. I don't know. It was, I was willing to take that risk, you know, and I know that I'm in a position that a lot of veterans, you know, aren't in, and service members couldn't be in at the time. So I was open. I was just kind of like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry if you don't agree with it, but this is my life. And I felt that when I was deployed, I felt like, you know, my comrades, my battle buddies, my leadership, they cared less about it. But when we were back home, we were stationed like on Fort Hood, on base, it seemed like, yeah, there was just a very different expectation. I don't think that had I just stayed and served at Fort Hood just during that entire time, that I could have been just as open and, you know, just gallivanting around, if you will. So I feel like there was some change when it came to being deployed. People were just kind of like, as long as you just complete the mission. But I was also dental. So I didn't find myself in any, you know, combat zones or anything like that. But yeah, it was a little bit more relaxed for me. And that was 2009. So I was just curious if anybody noticed that during their service. We have 2 questions from our audience, and I'll go ahead and jump into that. Question number 1 says, what would you say to LGBTQIA veterans who feel disillusioned with the military healthcare system? Skye.
One thing I learned is that, yet again, never stop pushing, never stop asking questions. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, as it were, because this is your medical care. You earned it. So maybe something that you have to work for twice. That's okay. It happens sometimes. We do the best we can to get through it. To leap onto previous advice, sometimes you need an outside advocate, somebody who can speak, somebody who can say, hey, we're having like an accessibility issue. Hey, we're having issues like receiving this kind of care. We're having issue with like these individuals, and it's like, at what point do they get tired of those phone calls? Like, at what point are they going to be like, okay, like, if we can't provide that service, like, how do we turn a no into a no? But, you know, I worked at the Department of Human Services in Oklahoma for like over a year and a half after I got my bachelor's. Thing I hated telling people, my clients that came to me for help because they're feeding their families, right? These are people with like families and kids, and you know, like they're on the edge and they want food, so they to their office and they put in an application. It's like the one thing I want to say to these hungry kids is no. So I got a list of resources that weren't us so that I could say no, but. And I think a lot more of us need to be in the habit of saying no, but, except for Sir Mix-a-Lot. He's fine. So like we can provide resources that we don't actually provide just by knowing that they exist, which is a lot better than just saying no. Just trust me on that. It's like, I hate saying no. Let me send you to somebody who can actually help if we can't, just because, like, there's a blind spot in the policy or whatever. But I just think there needs to be definitely more of that going on. But in the meantime, definitely be completely reasonable, but belligerent and nonstop. That's the best I got.
Monique.
Yeah, I agree with Skye. You have to be your own best advocate. But the one thing that's great these days is it's difficult to get an appointment at the VA. So you can tell them you want to go into the community, and they're very on board with that. So if you don't like the VA healthcare, just tell them you want to go into the community, and usually you can get out there at this time. It might change later, but at this time, it's easier to get in the community and get your service.
Crystal.
I will say that in my very limited experience with the military healthcare system, especially as a veteran, it is easy to get disillusioned because it's hard to get someone on the phone. It's hard to get an appointment. You have to wait forever when you finally do get an appointment. I would say to that person that's feeling disillusioned is that change is happening. It's going to be slow because the military is reactive instead of proactive. And if there are specific things that pertain to you that you're feeling disillusioned about, call your congressman, get with these VSO programs and voice what your concerns are, because it's only in voicing those opinions and concerns that we're going to know that they're problems to begin with. So I would definitely agree with Monique and Skye in being adamant and being your own best advocate.
Thank you so much for that. So the next question, before I jump into our viewers' second question, I want to pose a question to the panel. And again, this is, for those that feel comfortable talking about this, individual battle scars from discrimination and identity concealment and having to show up, right, as two different people. I know we touched a little bit on that earlier, but would any of you be willing to speak to that? Maybe some of our viewers are still navigating through that. And yeah, just some encouraging words, or even just the discussion around what that feels like and what long-term effects that may have on individuals serving that have to conceal their true identities. Skye.
I do remember quite a bit what it was like trying to live as part of two worlds. Like early when I first came out, the first time, not the second time, I was definitely a part of two worlds. Like I had the world that I existed in and I could be accepted in as long as I wasn't also gay. I guess I win because I wasn't also gay, but at the end of, like, when all of that was said and done, the part that I ended up being truer to was me, the part that part of my world would reject. When, like, this other world that I was in, I didn't have to hide who I was. I didn't have to hide my other part of my world from them. Like, they knew where I was spending my Sunday mornings. Like, nobody had any, like, misconceptions. Nobody was, like, hesitant or, making, like, snide comments behind my back. But on the other hand, when I did decide to just, like, stop living two lives and just live the one that I had and just live it authentically, because I'm the only me that I know. So it's like, I have to set that good example for myself. It got easier, super easy. In fact, once I pulled that pin and let it all come down, it's like I changed my relationship status on Facebook, and that's basically how I came out the first time. I was a little braver about it the second time. It's like, this is like, I'm a veteran at coming out at this point. My egg cracked and I was gay, and it's like, oh, it's just another egg inside. That's fine. We can deal with this. I was like a Russian nesting doll of eggs. So I was very good at doing the whole coming out thing. Of course, as we know, it's like we're in, like, the queer community. We come out every day. We have to. Oh yeah, I'm pansexual and I'm a lesbian. I'm gay. So it was very easy once I did that to not have to worry about like whose car is pulling into my driveway right now. Like, is this roommate or is this boyfriend on the sofa? Like, what's going on? Which would have been awkward if anybody had actually showed up because I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. But like, still, it was just so much easier when there was just one ball in the air to juggle. So it was scary getting to that point where it's just like, I'm ready. You know, I have all of this like anticipation, but you know, when I did it, the hate messages came in and then they went away and I never got him anymore. So it's like, we're good now. Everything's fine. Like I can go on and live my life and, you know, I can live in their head rent free. So I guess I win.
I can get to the mute button. Thank you so much. Monique, please.
You know, I hid so much. And even when I was dating, I would not hold hands with my girlfriend if we were out in the mall or, you know, going, you know, just to hang out. I always was very worried about if someone in the military would see me. And so I found even after that I could be open and serve, I still had a hard time with that. I still sometimes have a hard time holding my wife's hand in public. And I got to remember that, you know, it's okay. You're not going to be in trouble. But that definitely was something that that carried over and was a problem for a lot of my relationships because I just wasn't affectionate and they wanted that. They wanted people to know that they were with me, but I was trying to, you know, hide it.
And before we move on, Crystal, did you have any thoughts or want to make any comments?
I don't have anything to add. I do think that living your truth is very important, and I do understand that people are going to do that on their own time. But for anyone that's listening, whenever you decide to do that, that is absolutely your call. And in the meantime, right now, you are enough.
Thank you so much. And it's really important that we continue to have these types of conversations. For those who may not know, between the end of World War II and the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, approximately 114,000 U.S. service members were involuntarily separated, based on sexual orientation. This is definitely a conversation that I think should continue. The Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy itself existed from 1993 until 2011. And so prior to that, for those who may not know, the military had, different and often inconsistent standards on administrative discharge for service members of same-sex sexual orientations, which to me is absurd and it is mind-boggling. So the directive in the 50s established Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 homosexual categories. They would result in sanctions ranging from general or honorable condition discharges to general court-martials. In 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was instituted as a compromise of sort, although a lot of people don't see it that way. Really to limit widespread persecution, right, as implied in the remainder of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was the don't pursue, don't harass. So it's kind of changed, it's evolved, it's had many faces, none of which were good faces. But yeah, so again, that's why these conversations are important to have. It's important to continue the fight and just continue to educate yourself on a lot of things that have happened, barriers to service members, to veterans, just to life in and of itself. Service members, a lot of them join, like our panelists said earlier, whether it's for medical, education, just true patriotism, legacy, and they want to bring their whole selves to their service. And so having that one, identity be a barrier can really bring down the morale. So I want to wrap things up here soon. We have another question from our viewer, and that question is, was there a specific process put into place to fix the fact that people were discharged unjustly, or is each case different? And so if anybody has knowledge around this or experience, please feel free to go ahead and pop up and answer. Monique.
Yeah, there was some policy passed that said, if you were discharged for homosexual activity, that you could request an upgrade. And so I've helped many veterans do that. It's simple paperwork. If your DD 214 says you're discharged for homosexual conduct, I believe it's what it says, then you can fill out that paperwork and get it changed. So it's not a real difficult process now.
And did any of the other panelists want to speak to that about maybe specific processes that you're aware of or have, kind of come to light now? Okay, well, thank you so much for that information, Monique. That was a wonderful, wonderful point. So I want to start wrapping things up. And so I'll ask each of you, while the discussion we've had this evening could be heavy for some, could be triggering for others, let's talk about one good experience you've had in your service, or maybe one thing you miss about serving in the military. So tell us what branch you served in, what years you served, and yeah, just one good memory to end this discussion on a high note. And we'll start with Monique.
Well, I served in the Army from 1987 to 2013. So in 26 years, it's hard to grab just one, but I miss the people. I miss the soldiers to my left and right, whether they're male, female, straight or gay, right? I just loved the people that I served with. And, when you deploy, that's all you've got. And so you get this bond with them, and then everybody comes back and, moves on. And then you might go to another deployment and, you have more, you get closer to people. And then, so I miss the people.
Crystal.
So I served from 2017 to 2021. And I would also have to agree with Monique that I made some very good friends in the military. And I will never forget, some of the experiences that we've had and, AIT when we went through our training to do our jobs or just hanging out together after work. And then another honorable mention, good experience that I had was the first time I flew on an Army helicopter. That pretty much solidified for me that I was where I wanted to be in terms of what my job was. So yeah, that was fun.
And Skye.
It's definitely the community, definitely the people. Perhaps some of them were a little more difficult to love than others. But a lot of my unofficial role as I was chaptering out on a medical discharge in 2005, when I'd only been enlisted since 2004, was to comfort the people who were having just a really, really hard time. Made a mistake and smoked something they shouldn't have while they were at a party on the weekend, and it's now they're in huge trouble. It's calm down, it's gonna be fine, you're gonna be fine. So I was that person. I guess it makes sense now, just who I am and just what I do. But I was the person that made better soldiers out of the damaged ones, just by sheer coincidence of being there. So it's just one time in basic, I guess this will be my story. One time in basic, somebody in our platoon stole a can of chaw from the shopette and got caught. And so it's just I could tell the dude was struggling. He's just I don't know what happened. I just lost my military bearing. It's okay, stop. Don't let him get in your head. Breathe. Calm down. You made a mistake. It's fine. You're going to be fine. You can only deal with one line of bullshit at a time. And just whatever it was you were spewing a second ago is not helping you. So it's here's what we're going to do. We're going to go sit down. We're going to drink water. We're going to breathe. Okay? That was me. So it's just I was able to take people from, you know, a runaway train to a train that still has brakes, you know. So also, yeah, drink water.
Right, there you go.
I was going to say, Skye, were you Army? Yeah, we drink water and take a tea.
I was gonna say you could tell.
Yep,
Take a tea and drink water. Yeah.
there you go. Army all the way around. I'm here. This panel made me even more proud just now. But but I do want to thank you all so very much. For our viewers, how can they get in contact with you? How can they learn about the organizations that you represent? How can they get involved? Monique, tell us a little bit about FOB Hope, how our viewers can reach you, and what you have going on.
All right. Well, FOB Hope is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that conducts outreach to veterans living without homes. We provide them with resources and referral, but if they don't want to go into shelter, or if there is no shelter space available, which happens a lot, we provide them with a sleeping bag, tent, and gear to keep them warm, dry, and safe. We have in the past, we don't have any money right now, but we do some rental assistance and what's it called? Utilities assistance. And we have a reentry program working with women coming out of Purdy prison. And you can reach me at mbrown@fobhope.org. That's FOB, hope.org. And I wanted to say to the viewers too, va.gov, military.com, those are a couple of places where you can get a lot of answers to your questions.
Thank you so much. Skye, how can the viewers reach you?
Super easy. My email address is skye@diversityalliance.org. Long name. My fault. What we also do is work with the gender diverse communities, trans, non-binary, intersex, agender, gender fluid. We have all the flags, and we hang each and every one every time we table, and we're very, very proud about that. Email address again is skye@diversityalliance.org. You can also find Diversity Alliance of the Puget Sound on Facebook. We have a really active Discord groups 5 days a week. After we expanded from 2 a month just in the last 6 months. So we're doing great things. We help people pay for name changes because that's an amazing pain to do. Like, I'm coming out with a guide to get people through all of the steps. Like, there are guides out there, but I completed them and I can share them. And also, we don't have any funding for that program right now either. So there is a wait list for name changes, but we do help people pay for those. We have an HRT program where we can send you the kit to take your HRT, not the prescriptions themselves, like the non-prescription stuff, the needles, the syringes, the sharps containers, the alcohol swabs. We can send you just like a 2-month supply. That program is still running pretty well. And yeah, like anytime we have like a trans or other diverse individual come in who's like active duty or a veteran, it's like I'm the person that is automatically the liaison because I'm the only person that knows anything about any of that. And a lot of it is because I just had to brute force the system until I got it to work. So I'm a font of knowledge and information, and I love hearing from people. I check my spam folder very often because we have a huge problem with that. And I just love hearing from people. So it's like, we're doing in-person stuff soon. So it's like, email me about that. I love hearing from people.
Thank you so much. And Crystal, how can they reach you?
Right. So being the communications person that I am, we are on all the socials. So we are on Facebook at Minority Veterans of America. We are also on Insta and Twitter at Minority Vets. And then we also have a YouTube channel, Minority Veterans of America. And I can be reached directly at Ellington at minorityvets.org.
Thank you all again so much. Thank you so much, Seattle Pride. Oh, I'm sorry, Monique. Yes.
I want to say that I have a Facebook page.
There you
And I
go.
have a website. I totally forgot. FobHope.org is the website, and then we have a Facebook page. Just look up Fob Hope.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
And I believe the contact information has been dropped in the chat for the viewers. Please contact these organizations, reach out, learn more, volunteer support, but Seattle Pride. Thank you so very much for this amazing discussion this evening. I have been honored to serve as your moderator. Panelist, you have opened up so many different thought processes for me. You have explored so many different just experiences and talked about things that you have encountered. And so I thank you for that. Thank you for trusting me as your moderator to navigate this conversation. Yeah, have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the questions in the chat. And I hope you all continue to stay safe and have a wonderful evening.